The microphone was ripped out of my hand before I even finished my sentence. My mother's fingers dug into my arm as she forced me aside, her smile stretched tight as guests stared. "Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. I need your help to run this journey, thank you." "Please ignore him," she announced into the mic, her voice sugary but sharp. "My younger son gets carried away with his little fantasies." Laughter rippled through the banquet hall. My cousins lifted their phones, recording. My brother, always the golden child, smirked from the head table, arms crossed like a judge, enjoying the show. I stood frozen, shame choking my throat. I had only tried to share a small announcement about a business idea I'd been working on quietly. That was all. 1 minute of courage, and they destroyed it in front of everyone. The crowd murmured, someone whispered, he really thought this was the right place. Heat crawled up my neck. I stared at my mother as she replaced me at the microphone like I was a child who stepped out of line. As my brother raised his glass to mock toast me, to dreams that stay dreams, I felt something inside me snap, but not in anger, in clarity. He thinks I'll be a joke forever. She thinks I'll never be anything. They all do. The camera phones caught every second. That was the moment I understood. They didn't just underestimate me. They enjoyed it. My name is Benson. And this is the story of how the family that shamed me became the family that had to watch me on TV. I grew up in a house where success was measured by two things, stability and status. My mother worshipped both. She wasn't cruel, but she was rigid, sharp, obsessed with appearances. My older brother Nolan fit her mold perfectly, clean-cut, obedient, predictable, corporate-minded. She praised him like he was carved from marble. She called him her future legacy. Me. I was curious, thoughtful, always building something, tinkering with cheap electronics, learning how things worked. But she saw none of that as talent, just a phase, a weakness. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" she'd ask weekly, sometimes daily. Comparisons became the background noise of my childhood. Nolan got congratulations. I got concerns. And slowly it shaped me, the quiet kid who avoided conflict because it was easier than being misunderstood. At 16, I asked my mother if she could co-sign a small loan so I could start a lawn equipment repair business. I had everything planned, flyers, pricing, even a friend willing to help. She didn't even let me finish. "You are not serious enough for business," she said, dismissing me with a wave. "Focus on school, don't embarrass us with childish ideas." 2 months later, Nolan asked for a much bigger loan to buy a truck, just to look good at work. She signed the papers the same day. She even threw him a little party for it. That was the first time I felt something that wasn't anger, but disappointment. A quiet, heavy kind. The kind you don't forget. By college, I was used to being overlooked. At family dinners, Nolan spoke for hours about his job at a logistics firm. Mom hung on every word like it was gospel. When I talked about tech, design, or app concepts, she'd respond with polite nods that weren't really polite. "That's interesting, dear," she'd say. Then she'd immediately pivot back to Nolan. Everyone pivoted back to Nolan. One night I brought home a prototype of a cheap scheduling tool I built from scratch. Mom glanced at it for 5 seconds and said, "That's nice, but have you considered a real career path?" Real? She loved that word. Everything she didn't understand was not real. That banquet, the one you saw in the opening, was a huge family reunion. I had spent weeks preparing a small pitch to introduce my idea for a digital household management service. I didn't want investors. I just wanted a moment. One moment where I wasn't the family joke. I told Nolan about my idea beforehand. He laughed and said, "Don't embarrass yourself, Mom will lose it." He was right. She did. You saw the result. My humiliation spread across the whole room, and I heard one aunt whisper, "He still thinks he'll be the next big tech guy, poor kid." That night I left early. Didn't say goodbye. I drove home in silence, replaying every laugh, every rolled eye, every mocking glance. But instead of breaking me, it focused me. That night was the spark I needed. I decided to stop telling anyone anything. For the first time, I built quietly. I worked nights after my part-time job, learning backend systems, payment gateways, improved UI design. I found forums, tutorials, online communities where people actually believed in innovation. They didn't know my past. They didn't know my family. They only saw my work. And it felt like breathing for the first time. I named my idea HomeGrid*, a simple digital platform for families to track bills, tasks, repairs, and budgets in one place. Not flashy, practical, but every time I made progress, my mother would drop comments. Still working on that little computer thing. Benson, don't waste your youth. You're not a risk taker, you don't have the personality for business. She said it so often I started to hear it, even when she wasn't speaking. I entered HomeGrid into a local innovation competition. The winner got a small grant, nothing life-changing, but enough to take my idea to the next level. Nolan found out and said, "They'll never pick you, be realistic." Even my mother said, "Don't get your hopes up, I don't want you disappointed." They said it like caring, but it was. When I didn't win, they didn't comfort me. They validated their beliefs. "I told you," Mom said, patting my shoulder, "not everyone is meant to build things." That sentence stayed with me for months. It became fuel. I met him at a small local tech meetup. His name was Mr. Alden, grey hair, kind eyes, retired engineer. He listened to my idea for 10 minutes and then said, "You have something here, it's simple and simple sells." No one had ever said something like that to me before. He wasn't impressed by Nolan. He wasn't charmed by my mother. He saw me. He offered to mentor me, free of charge. Those sessions became my lifeline. He taught me how to pitch, how to plan, how to scale without drowning. And slowly, HomeGrid grew beyond a hobby. I landed my first real client, a local property manager who needed a tool for tenant reminders and repair logs. He didn't care that I didn't have a fancy resume. He cared that the system worked. When I told my family, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud, Mom looked confused. "You mean someone is actually paying you for that?" Nolan snorted, probably just trying to be nice. They didn't believe me. But the check cleared. The contract renewed. And more small clients trickled in. I stopped sharing updates. Because being doubted hurts less when no one knows enough to doubt you. One night my mother called me the floating sun, the one who wandered through life with no direction. She said it at dinner. In front of relatives. Very casually. "I worry about Benson, he doesn't have roots, he just floats." I smiled politely. But inside, something final clicked. I realized I could never win with her. Not unless I became something she couldn't deny. And I would. Not for revenge. But for survival. HomeGrid reached a point where I was making more from clients than my part-time job. I quit the job quietly. I expanded my features. I reinvested everything. I rented a tiny studio workspace that looked like a broom closet with Wi-Fi. But it was mine. When Mom heard I left my job, she didn't ask to understand. She just said, "You really are lost." Not angry. Worse, disappointed. But this time I didn't feel small. I felt driven. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A local journalist was doing a segment about small tech entrepreneurs creating solutions from garage-level beginnings. Alden had secretly nominated me. The journalist liked HomeGrid. She loved the story. "You built this after being discouraged by everyone?" she asked. "Yes," I said simply. They filmed for a day my workspace, my process, my clients using the system. When it aired, everything changed overnight. Emails flooded in. Client requests doubled. A small investment fund reached out. My family didn't know yet. But soon they would. The TV segment hit faster than gossip. My aunt called my mother first. "You didn't tell us Benson was some kind of tech star." Mom pretended she knew. But she didn't. Not even close. By the time she called me, her voice was trembling, confused, nervous, too sweet. "Benson, honey, we saw you on TV. Why didn't you tell us?" I almost laughed. But I stayed calm. "You never asked." Nolan called an hour later. His tone wasn't supportive, it was threatened. "So what, you're some kind of CEO now?" Something like that. He hung up without saying goodbye. For the first time in my life, they didn't know where to place me. A small but reputable firm invited me to pitch. They loved HomeGrid's concept, the traction, the press coverage. They offered a $2 million valuation and seed funding. I accepted. I walked out of that building with a new life. Not wealth, not pride, freedom. Finally, my mother invited me to dinner the following week. When I arrived, the entire table was set like a magazine spread. She hugged me too tightly. "I want our family to look united, especially now that you're successful." There it was. The real reason. Not pride. Public image. She wanted to pose beside my victory, like she had always supported me. I stayed polite. But distant. She noticed. "You seem cold." "I'm just different now." "Well, maybe don't stay too different." I smiled softly. "Mom, you'll figure out what that means eventually." Nolan's company started downsizing. His department was hit the hardest. One night he showed up at my apartment, frustrated and panicked. "They're considering layoffs. I might be next. Can you help me find something in tech?" I stared at him, my brother who had mocked me for years. "You don't have the personality for tech," I said gently, repeating the words he once used. He didn't take it well. "You think you're better than me now?" "No," I said, "I just think differently." He cursed and stormed out. But reality wasn't done with him yet. 2 months later, Nolan was laid off. His girlfriend left soon after. His savings drained fast. He tried freelancing but had no skills for it. Mom blamed the company. But everyone else knew. Nolan had relied on being the golden child so long that he never learned how to stand alone. Meanwhile, HomeGrid doubled in users again. And then a regional news network called me. They wanted me for a special segment on young innovators. I said yes. Mom tried to control the narrative. But the world didn't care what she wanted. Mom invited me over again, this time with tension hanging thick like smoke. Nolan was there, jaw tight, embarrassment burning in his eyes. Mom spoke first. "You need to help your brother, family supports each other." I looked at her calmly. When I needed support, where was the family? Silence. She blinked fast, searching for excuses. "I didn't know you were serious. I didn't want you to get hurt. I always believed in you." "Mom," I said gently but firmly, "stop rewriting history." Her face trembled. Nolan stood, "So now you're too important for us." "No," I said, "I'm just done being the family shame." And I walked out. The extended family started talking. People praised me publicly. Old clips of the reunion humiliation resurfaced. Some cousins apologized privately. Others pretended they always supported me. Mom hated the shift. She had built her identity on being the mother of the perfect son. But now the perfect son was unemployed, and the shameful son was on TV. Her pride cracked loudly. The regional interview aired, painting a clear picture. A young man underestimated by his family rises to success through discipline and innovation. They didn't name my family. They didn't have to. Everyone recognized the type. Messages poured in from strangers, saying they related. Investors reached out with interest. Users flocked to HomeGrid. Nolan didn't show his face for days. Mom cried more than she admitted. But I felt calm. Not vindictive. Just finally seen. Mom showed up at my office without calling. She walked slowly, like the building humbled her. Benson, your uncle is hosting a big charity gala. I want you there. It would mean a lot if the family appeared united. There it was, the last card in her deck. Public perception. I won't be attending, I said softly. Her lips trembled. People will ask why. What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them the truth, I said. That your son finally stopped floating. She swallowed hard. That was the moment she knew I wasn't coming back to her version of family. Nolan called me days later, voice low, desperate. He wanted a job, any job. Even receptionist-level tasks. I can't hire you, I said gently. You're my brother, it would cause problems. You owe me, he shouted. For what? For being there. You were never there, I said quietly. He didn't argue. He just breathed heavily and hung up. He never called again. The downfall wasn't dramatic. It was slow, quiet, inevitable. Mom lost social footing as relatives noticed the truth. She had built her pride on the wrong son. Nolan moved back home, defeated and bitter. People stopped admiring him. They started pitying him. Mom tried to keep up the illusion, but her eyes told the story. She knew she had pushed away the one child who could have brought light into her life. And she had done it to protect the image of a son who couldn't hold his own. Arrogance had taken everything from her. HomeGrid hit a milestone, 50,000 users. Then 75,000. Then a national talk show invited me. I went. I told my story. Not with anger. With clarity. I said, sometimes the people closest to you cannot see your potential. That doesn't make the potential any less real. The audience applauded. My phone buzzed nonstop for days. I was Benson the disappointment anymore. I was Benson the builder. Benson the founder. Benson the one who kept going. A year after the reunion humiliation, I stood in my new office overlooking the city. A reporter asked me, if you could speak to the people who doubted you, what would you say? I thought about my mother, my brother, the laughter, the shame, the silence, and I said, I don't need to say anything to them, my life says it for me. Because real revenge isn't anger. It's growth. It's peace. It's walking away from those who tried to shrink you. I never confronted them again. Never argued. Never defended myself. I simply lived. And they watched. Please do well to drop your comment below. Thank you.